I love Snoop Deal Double G. Great person.
So, do you love Death Row Records?
I love Death Row. I love Death. Excuse me. Fake news. I love Death Row.
What's your favorite Death Row record, Mr. Trump?
All of them. All of the Death Row records. Don't try to pin me down. I see what he just... Excuse me.
Fake news.
Excuse me.
Fake news.
Fake news.
Look out for
They tried to give me the virus. I beat the virus. Why you say they tried to? They tried to give me the virus. Like, who is they?
It is me, Daeron, by myself this time. Welcome to another episode, though. We're nearing the end of official summer here, and I guess in this hemisphere. Anyway, here we are with summer nearing an end, and had some episodes fall through and some stuff going on here in and around the Psychosemantic bunker. There's the usual dog days of summer, and little dude is getting ready to start back at school. My best half has had her mother's been in the hospital pretty much since the beginning of the month. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff going on over here, but sometimes it's tough to get guests. Sometimes episodes fall through. It happens not all that often for me not having a regular co-host, but I need to suck it up and get better at putting out these solo episodes worth everybody's time. Of course, whenever you talk about specific details in the American political landscape, as of the time of recording of this episode, everything I say is current as of now. Who the fuck knows what's going on whenever you end up in this. But I was stewing about a recent state Supreme Court decision, and the 2022 midterm elections here in the U.S. are just a few months away, November 8th, 2022. And there will probably be a few of these between now and then. Anybody that's been listening for a while knows that this is pretty regular around these times of year. There are going to be, or there have been and will be, because some of these have already happened, 30 states having elections for their state Supreme Court. State Supreme Courts have been getting more attention since the Federalist Society Court has been disbanding precedents and claiming that things are left up to state Supreme Courts and state legislatures, which, if you only half pay attention to politics, if you think the federal House and Senate are clown college or a shit show or whatever you want to say. I know I was half excited or optimistic about this was going to be the year that the new anti-gerrymandering provisions in the state constitution came into effect. But the Ohio legislature that last check was something like, well, they have a gerrymandered supermajority, so they do not need any votes from anybody from any of the other parties to pass any legislation, whereas voter representation of the state is more like 55-45. So, like I say this a lot, but pretty much if you're listening to this and you're still listening to this one specifically, you know how pretty much all that shit works. The people on the redistricting committee, which was primarily Republican, there were 2 Democrats and the rest were Republican state officers. They just kind of said, fuck it. And they have had 5 maps ruled unconstitutional by the Ohio State Supreme Court. But there have been no consequences, and there's still no consequences. The way it is right now, if nothing changes, they will just have to make new maps every couple years, more frequently than they do now. But that's how they can get around having to have consensus. That could change. This is where I get back sort of to the point. Right now, the Ohio State Supreme Court has 7 judges. And they are 4 conservative, 3 non-conservative. Recently, that gerrymandered supermajority I previously spoke of passed legislation after a couple non-Republican judges won. They passed legislation now requiring a judge's political party be put on the ballots. There's going to be a handful of states, when I start getting into these numbers, that some states require judges' political affiliation to be on a ballot. That usually makes things easier for the people that vote straight down whatever mailer they get sent. This is the blank party's endorsed candidates. I'm one of those weirdos that I've been researching candidates for months already and other shit like that. The main thing I wanted to talk about before I go anywhere off the rails or realize I've been C-spanning you all into sleepy tears, I wanted to talk about in 2022 in the US, there will be 85 of the 344 total seats of state Supreme Courts are up for election. Here in Ohio, there are 3 up this year. One was easy to guess because he is the son of the current governor, who is also a defendant in the gerrymandering state Supreme Court cases. He was easy to guess, his political affiliation. But now that they have to disclose it or list it or whatever, it has never been hard to find the information about judges, especially if you just look up the things that they've been running on. But in a 4-3 Republican majority court here, 3 of those 4 Republican seats, or we'll get to it. My state is no more important than any others. So not all of the states are having Supreme Court elections this year. I'm going to just ramble off a couple. So I'm going to skip some, but especially... Okay, so the place with the most state Supreme Court seats up for election this year is a tie between Texas and Kansas, 6 seats up. And both of those are on November 8th, 2022. I did not look into how many judges are on every state's Supreme Court. That might not all be 7, but that's one of the weird ways that, like, states are. There's all sorts of different rules because it's easier to get away with fuckery at the state level. But anyway, 64 of the judgeships up in state Supreme Courts are still technically nonpartisan. 13 are Republican judges and 8 are Democratic Party judges. Most of the elections are on November 8th, and none of them, all the other ones that have happened have already passed. Arkansas and Georgia were in May, and Tennessee. And I kind of feel like when I first started the show, at least a decent amount of people weren't very used to talking about this sort of shit out and about, or, kept it more away from their online personas and lives. But as the show's been growing with our audience, I have no idea if the basic, you know, government 101 stuff that I used to do a lot are useful to enough people, or if it happens infrequently enough that you long standers aren't tired of it, or you love me even though you might not download it or listen to it, and you'll be back for the next one. So in these times off where I've been fucking around on the website or talking with people about other shows, or doing outside activist stuff. So yeah, I we're at least far enough in to this episode, even if I cut a bunch of that out, that if you're still here and you're still talking to me, that you are just as likely to drop me a line, say which type of stuff that I do or we do, depending on, if you've got somebody that I've gotten on with. And I mean, there hasn't been anybody that's been on the show that is like, oh, I will never have a conversation with that person again. So don't feel like somebody's going to be left out. I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about. Anyway, I basically, so I've just been trying to think about what sort of stuff the show doesn't need to do anymore, including these rambly solo missives that I belt out if I haven't sat down with somebody for a few weeks. And, especially a few years ago, there were a lot of direct questions from people, especially maybe outside the U.S. They're like, hey, could you just go on a little bit about that? Because as anybody knows, there's so much intricacy. There's intricate workings and long histories of governments that, like, I kind of feel embarrassed and extremely American that I know so little about the way other countries' governments work. I mean, I know more about what they do than how they do it. So yeah, so some things that are supposed to be happening in the future. I've got some Canadian people going to teach me a little bit about how that all goes on up there in America's upstairs neighbor, or better adjusted or slightly better adjusted cousin, and other random things. Shit to just think about is guests that you've been missing, that you want to come back. Well, then I'll just be like, hey, it's not me. It's the people. The people want you back. So you gotta love the people. And so those sorts of things, movie requests, working on ideas of ways to fuck around with YouTube. I think I probably said that before, but so yeah, there's still totally stuff going on behind the scenes. If you have not watched Prey yet, it's an easy recommend. I think most people would argue it's at least in the top 3 Predator films. And I know some people are having debates with themselves and others on if they like it more than Part 2. I've not heard anybody say that it's their favorite of the franchise, but I can easily recommend that and could totally be a conversation here on the show. I also watched the Blumhouse, Peacock, They Them, with Kevin Bacon and Veda Sultanfuss, or whatever her name was, on My Girl from My Girl, making a cameo as the camp nurse. It's so new that I don't really know how much to say, but there's some stuff I dug about it and stuff that I would criticize about it, but we've still got Congress to talk about, which traditionally in a midterm year, the president's party loses a lot. The Republicans may be leveling that field with the whole overturning of abortion rights and other fucking shit that they've decided to spew upon the planet as they lose no real power yet, but actual representative majority opinion power. Of course, that's the optimistic part of me, is that they are just bringing down as many of their perceived enemies as possible as they scream into the darkness and the void. And the other one is like, no, it's just getting worse. Could be both. Could be neither. What the fuck do I know? I'm not a political scientist, and they're still guessing. They're still just guessing. With good information, with making use of their information. So, the midterms. 435 House seats, as per usual, in the midterm elections. 34 Senate seats, November 8th, 2022. 5 of the 6 non-voting members in the U.S. House are up for elections as well. 2 special elections in November. The final 4 years of Jim Inhofe's Republican of Oklahoma. His term started in 2021, and then as soon after he won the election, he announced that he's resigning effective January 3rd this coming year, 2023. There will also be the final weeks of Kamala Harris's term that she started in California before becoming the vice president. Of course, that Harris. And it'll be the first after the reapportionment that happened with the extremely tinkered with and poorly handled, to say the least, if you don't want to get accusatory, census. There will be Texas, Colorado, Florida, Montana, North Carolina, and Oregon gain House seats in the U.S. House of Representatives, and California, Illinois, Michigan, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia lose seats in the House of Representatives. There's so many people in new districts. Look it up. Check it twice. Santa Claus that shit. Up until the second midterm primary that happened here, different government websites had me listed in different districts until somebody finally fixed one. But anyway, for the U.S. Senate right now, there are 48 Democrats, 2 independents who caucus with the Democrats, and 50 Republicans. The tie-breaking vote is the vice president, who is Vice President Harris. And in the House of Representatives, there are 220 Democratic Party members, 211 Republican Party members, and 4 vacancies. And there are 14 seats held by Democrats, 20 seats held by Republicans that are up for that. So, who the fuck knows? It's close. It's fucking tight. But as you saw, as per usual, it's going to be stressful for me, I'll tell you that. And it's going to be stressful for other people. There's going to be... One of the Senate seats is here in Ohio. Senator Rob Portman, who is the typical Republican ghoul who, in also typical fashion, made a big point of how he was getting out of politics because they've gotten so partisan, and then immediately got more partisan after he announced his retirement. His seat is up, and it is between the Democrat Tim Ryan, who seems to be going for that heart of America, Republicans and Democrats can work together sort of thing, and he is up against J.D. Vance of various notorieties. I don't know which thing you want to talk about with him, but he is pretty much like outgoing Rob Portman, seems to be a total douche who spends no real time in the state. Or generally found elsewhere doing fundraising and not doing town halls. All right. You've suffered enough. I hope you're all doing well, especially if you're listening to this. You must be a wonderful person. So we will talk soon. Check out your state Supreme Court elections. They're going to have a lot more say and a lot more shit. And it's easier to snake one past people. Talk to you soon.
He did what we all must learn to do. You and you and you.